Welcome to What's Happening SBC. I am your host, Rose Carmody. I hope everyone is having a good day so far. Today we are joined by my father to give us some information and insights on what goes on at the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum. Please welcome our special guest, Thomas Carmody.
Good morning, Rose. Good morning, everybody.
I want to start off by thanking you for taking time out of your day to join us here on What's Happening SBC.
I'm glad to be here. The Bossier Parish Community College is dear to my heart.
I also want to start off by asking you a few questions about yourself so the viewers can know more about you. What exactly is your job title and what does it consist of?
My job title is I am the director of the Louisiana State Museums, and I was appointed by Kyle Ardwan, Louisiana Secretary of State, to direct the currently 9 museums under his system.
Okay. So how long have you been the director of the state museums?
I've been the director of the state museums since January of 2020.
All right. So as you said before, not only are you in charge of the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum, you're also in charge of 8 others. Can you go into detail about the traveling aspect of your job?
Well, it would probably be easier for me to explain to everybody where those 8 museums are. The Louisiana State Exhibit Museum is here on the fairgrounds in Shreveport. And so my traveling from our home in Broadmoor down Kings Highway to the fairgrounds is not that far. But I also have the Louisiana Oil and Gas Museum, which is located in Oil City, which is about 20 miles north of Shreveport. I also have the Mansfield Female College Museum in Mansfield, Louisiana, which is approximately 25 miles south of Shreveport. I have the Germantown Colony Museum in Minden, which is probably about 30 miles. Also, the Eddie G. Robinson Museum, which is on Grambling's campus near Louisiana Tech, about an hour away. And then also the Louisiana State Cotton Museum, which is in Lake Providence, which is in the far northeast corner of the state, and it takes 3 hours to get there.
Far drive.
Well, and then if I had to go to the Louisiana Old State Capitol in Baton Rouge, which I will on Tuesday to meet with the secretary, that's a 4-hour drive. And so it encompasses a lot of travel to be able to go to each of the museums and to help assist with the missions to tell the story of the history of the state.
Okay. So did COVID make it difficult for you to travel back and forth?
COVID didn't make it so difficult, but what ended up happening was that remote meetings became much more important. And although the state of Louisiana, when I was an elected official with the legislature, we did not have really the ability to do that type of remote meeting. And so when COVID happened, everybody hunkered down in place. And so having the ability to communicate with one another virtually really did help.
Okay. So besides the traveling in the other museums, how did COVID affect the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum? And are those still affecting it?
We're seeing some relief from the loss of attendance to all of the museums. Because as we all know, that during the pandemic we were told not to really socially interact with people, to stay away from large crowds. And so I had just received the report for the final attendance for the year 2020, and it was the lowest attendance in over 50 years for the museums. Because nobody had gone out. We actually had to close the museums and send everybody home for a period of last year, which, as we all know, was difficult.
So now we're going to take a short break, but after the break we'll be getting the insights on the new renovations, so stay tuned. You don't want to miss it.
Hi, and welcome to Bossier Parish Community College's Sound Recording Technology program. I'm Lewis Williams, and I'm one of the instructors in sound technology. Let's take a look at what we have. All the instructors in the sound program are industry professionals currently working in sound production, whether it be live sound, music performance, or sound recording. We have current and former students who are doing what they love, working in television, radio, recording studios, live sound, in places of worship, and in the movie industry.
I am a non-traditional student, and what brought me to school was spending a lot of time out in the private sector and learning how important specialized training can be. The reason I came to BPCC was because I spent a lot of time in the private sector, in the music scene, and without a lot of guidance or direction. I just had a desire to create art and to be a part of the industry, and coming to school made the most sense because it allowed me to learn some of my bad habits and get rid of those and build good professional habits from the ground up. I feel like Bossier Parish Community College's sound recording program will help my career by teaching me the professional standard practices for recording audio, whether for a commercial song for an artist or scoring a movie or doing Foley, understanding the need for organization and the correct process to get those things done. I think it'll be a big help for me in the professional world.
Our hands-on approach to teaching sound technology, we feel, is the only true way to learn sound production. You cannot learn this technology from reading a book. Because of our approach, we utilize the most up-to-date recording and live sound equipment available for classroom instruction. So, if you want a career in sound recording, music production, live sound, or sound for film, come see us here at Bossier Parish Community College and let us show you how to get started in this exciting industry.
Dominion-aire, hey. Huh. Communication media, hands-on, yeah. No, we hands-on, give you all the tools you need to succeed only at BPCC. Communication media, hands-on, yeah. You know we hands-on, giving you all the tools you need to succeed only at BPCC. Broadcasting, TV production, wanna be on television, we can get you started. Every day's a photo shoot, got fine art photography, know the film up, also making documentaries, graphic designers, real fun, Photoshop, illustrators, characters come alive with computer animation. We got sound recorded with studio production without the training. How could I record this greatest? Lights, camera, action, come alive and be creative, business of music, maybe you could be my next agent. Media for ministry, pitches where you wanna be, looking for all the majors that breed creativity. Communication media ain't for the wannabes, yeah. It's only for the gonna-bees. Got cool professors, master your craft with ease. Cool professors, master your craft with ease.
Welcome back to What's Happening SBC. If you're just now joining us, I am your host, Rose Carmody, and joining us today is my father, Thomas Carmody, to talk about the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum. Before the break, we have learned some things about you. Can you briefly recap your position in the museum for the people just now joining us?
Yes, I'm the director of the Louisiana State Museums under the Secretary of State. There are, right now, we have 9 museums that I actually am the director for.
All right, so thank you. But now hopefully everyone that just joined us is now caught up. I have heard that the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum recently had some renovations done to it. What did y'all do and why?
Well, the renovations, the building itself was built in 1939, and so it's coming up on almost 100 years that the museum has been there. Originally, when the museum was built, the artifacts and the collection were stored in a basement, and basements typically are not built in Louisiana because the water level is so close to the surface that if you dig a hole, you're going to find water. But they did build a basement, which is underneath our auditorium at the museum, and that's where all the artifacts had been kept since the building was built in 1939. But just like any basement in Louisiana, it is a kind of a moist, dank environment in which it's not conducive to keeping artifacts preserved. And so that's what approximately 30 years ago, the state of Louisiana realized that we were in danger of losing all the artifacts that we had because of the environment they were being kept in. And the legislature approved the funds to build an archives. And so the renovations, what we've really done is now, since we've built our new archives building, the state of Louisiana spent almost $1.8 million to build that building.
Oh, wow.
It's beautiful, but we've relocated all the artifacts out of the basement and now have them in a climate-controlled storage area so that they can be cared for and researched.
Or any of those artifacts like destroyed completely that y'all just had to get rid of, or can you get rid of them?
Well, what happens is anything that's organic, like and we have so many Native American, especially Caddo Indian type baskets.
Yeah.
Well, they're made out of vegetation, and if vegetation gets wet and then it dries out and it gets wet, it just deteriorates, as we all know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there was some damage to things that we lost because they were not able to be preserved.
So during like the whole building process, how long did that take?
Ooh. The building process went quick. If you think about it, 2.5 years of construction, to get the funding for it took 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that is hard to imagine, but the state of Louisiana, when we prepare to do things, it takes a long time to get the funding secured.
Now is it like completely finished?
It is, yes, we've accepted it, and we'll now be relocating some of the administrative offices and the staff back into this new building.
Okay, now you said it was a whole 30-year period.
Yes.
Did COVID affect like the building and then getting all the artifacts in and out?
It did, because our game plan was, once the building was finished, that we would immediately start to move the artifacts in, but it hit right when the COVID came in. And so instead of us being able to get the artifacts and the collection out of the basement at that point, it all sat until we were able to come back to the museum. So yeah, about a 3-month delay right there.
So did those like artifacts that you did like were, I guess, deteriorated and stuff, did y'all figure that out like during COVID, or like y'all knew they were gone?
No, we knew before.
Okay.
Because and again, that was something that, as a member of the legislature and being asked to come to the museum years and years ago, they took us through the basement and they showed us that it was just, unless we acted to get the money to build the new building, so much of this would be lost.
Yeah. Was the building already up before COVID hit, or were y'all in like?
No, we were in the process of building it.
Oh,
Yes.
so you couldn't move anything anyway.
Correct.
Into the new thing.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for giving us an inside look at what's happening to the museum. But me being your daughter, I know your favorite thing about the museum, but I want you to let our viewers know what your favorite thing is.
It's hard to put your finger on your favorite thing about the museum, but I will try. There are so many unique things in the museum, Rose, that you can't see it all in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much that you can come back, like I do every day, and I stop and learn something new because it's just fascinating to me. But I certainly love the dioramas that are there, and those dioramas were constructed at a time when Louisiana was converting from a very labor-intensive commerce, where it required many, many people's hands in order to pick crops or to harvest things, then to the point of where technology came in and revolutionized it. And so all the dioramas are a snapshot of 1930s Louisiana right before the Second World War. And I love the fact that all those dioramas are actually made from beeswax, and they look so real, but they're fantastic. The car, the Borg Davis automobile that we have in the museum.
The one up front?
Yes, it's the only one of its kind, but it was built here in Shreveport and Cedar Grove. If you can imagine, there was a car company, and Dick Nelson and his friends put the car back together, and it's there for everyone to enjoy. I still love the Caddo canoe that is over 1,000 years old. They said that the canoe is so large, and granted, people the Indians were probably much smaller in stature than we are today, but they figured that 18 Indians could get in that canoe.
18?
18 Indians. And so if you thought about getting in the canoe in Shreveport where it was found, there wasn't a Shreveport 1,000 years ago, but the area, the same area. But they figured that 18 men could have gotten in that canoe and paddled down the Red River 200 miles in a day.
Oh, wow.
Think about that.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Now that's with the current. But 18 men in one canoe, you could move a lot of merchandise.
Yeah. You know the knives. You got to talk about your family.
Well, when you say the knives,
Or swords.
they're really the
Sorry.
swords. A little boy had come in with his grandfather the other day, and he was not happy to have been brought to the museum. And he was about 9 years old, and so I told him, I said, "Welcome to the museum." And he said, "My grandfather made me come." And I said, "You don't want to be here to learn something?" He said, "No."
Oh.
And I said, "No." I said, "Why don't you just walk around?" I said, "Walk around the museum, and when you get finished, come back and tell me what your favorite thing is in here." And after 45 minutes, he walked up and he said, "I got it." I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "That case over there with all those swords in it." I said, "That's my favorite one too."
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
There's the
'Cause
car you're talking about.
There's the Borg Davis right there. And it's just a fantastic. So here, and again, this is one of my favorite because I love to be outside and I love to be amongst the nature. But this is a depiction of the native animals that are here in the state of Louisiana, and that's a wildlife scene with all of the migratory waterfowl, the ducks and the geese that are native to Louisiana, or that migrate through here, I should say. And of course, that is a fox that we're looking at there.
So we're going to cut to break real fast, but after break, I want you to tell us 2 interesting facts.
Just two?
Well, you can have more if you want.
Okay.
When it comes to earning your degree, we know unexpected life events can wreak havoc on your success. If you're a student and find yourself in need, you're not alone. Bossier Parish Community College cares for you and wants to help. That's why we've launched the Cavalier Care Center. The Cavalier Care Center is your one-stop hub for programs like SNAP, Medicaid, free legal aid, help with tax credits, and more. Through a partnership with the Food Bank of North Louisiana, we have a USDA-approved emergency food pantry to address food insecurities among our students. And we offer a laptop loan program to help you during your time at BPCC. If you've got a job interview coming up, stop by the Career Closet and we'll get you dressed for success. Our #1 priority at Bossier Parish Community College is making sure our students get the best education possible, and the Cavalier Care Center is one more way we're helping to make sure that happens. For more information, visit us online at bpcc.edu or contact us today. We're ready to help you.
Welcome back to What's Happening SBC. I am your host, Rose Carmody, and our guest, Thomas Carmody. And before the break, I wanted to note 2 interesting facts, but I know you have a lot more.
I do have a lot more interesting facts. One interesting fact that just comes to mind, and for those that have been to the museum is shaped as a big circle. And so it has an interior courtyard. And inside the interior courtyard of the museum is a pool of water, which is now a fountain. But when I was a child, and for many, many years, almost 50 years, they had an alligator.
I wish we still had one.
That's right. and the alligator's name was Charlie Bob. And
Charlie Bob.
Charlie Bob.
How did that name?
Well, and this is kind of interesting fact. We'll get to the second one, but the interesting fact about Charlie Bob was that Charlie Bob was brought to the museum by apparently a little boy who had captured an alligator when it was just
A baby?
just hatched, and that he had it at the house, according to the story.
Oh.
Okay, and kept it in the bathtub, but that his parents got nervous that the alligator kept getting larger and larger.
As animals do.
And so he apparently loved to go to the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum, and the little boy had a relationship with the director at the time, and the little boy said, "I've got this alligator, I don't know what I'm going to do with," and the director said, "Well, we have this nice pool right here, we could put the alligator right here in the middle of the pool and he'll be fine." Well, then the next interesting and second fact is, how do you feed an alligator that's in a museum for 50 years? Well, they said that the Louisiana Highway Department came by in a truck every day with whatever they had found on the side of the road and pitched it into the pool for Charlie Bob to eat.
So I can see where they don't want another alligator in there.
Well, and again, if you think about it, it's so just dangerous, the idea that you would have a captured reptile. And Charlie Bob was big. He wasn't little like when the little boy had him. He grew up to be almost probably 9 feet long.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so he was there all the way up to the time that he died, which was approximately about 20 years ago, and they cremated the alligator and then buried his ashes on the grounds of the museum.
So the alligator is not the real one that was in the middle?
Not the one that we just saw.
Yeah.
That is not Charlie Bob.
Oh.
And they'd said that when the alligator died, that the Louisiana wildlife biologist came and looked at the alligator and said Charlie Bob was a girl. So,
oh no.
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting fact. The other thing that I think is interesting is just kind of the history of the museum in relation to Shreveport, because the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum on our fairgrounds, it sits on 6 acres that was actually given by the city of Shreveport to the state of Louisiana so that the state could have the federal government build the museum here. Why a museum of the caliber of the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum would have been built in Shreveport and not in New Orleans or not in Baton Rouge?
A bigger.
Is because of the political influence of the elected members of Congress from Louisiana during the Depression. And they were from North Louisiana. And so they directed the federal money because each state received money to have a state museum made. And they had enough political muscle, or I should say goodwill, to convince their colleagues to vote to put it in Shreveport, which was way away from New Orleans, as we all know. But it is a Smithsonian affiliate museum that hands down is the best in the state.
I agree. But if you could pick another, like your second favorite museum out of the ones you are director of, what would it be?
Well, and now you're going to get me in trouble with all the other museums when you ask
don't
that.
do that.
But I will tell you this. My second favorite museum would have to be the building that Mark Twain, who had been a riverboat pilot before he became a famous author, he called the building the ugliest building on the Mississippi River.
Well, that's not very nice.
Well, it wasn't. But do you know what building he was talking about, Rose? It's one of the only castles in America. Old State
Capitol.
The Old State Capitol.
Yeah.
And so,
that.
but the Old State Capitol, having again served in Louisiana politics and served in the legislature, I always have kind of been drawn to the fact that why would the state or any state build a castle? Well, the reason is because of Louisiana's colonial history. And if you think about the fact that the Spanish and the French and the English, that they would create something that was very European and very unique. But I love that one as well.
So going back to the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum, if our audience wants to learn more, do they have to set up an appointment or can they just walk in?
Either way, but we get calls all the time about what do you charge to come into the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum? And that's the easy answer. There's no admission charge to come to the museum, and we have visitors traveling, foreigners from all over the world that come to see the museum, and they all ask the same question: how can you operate this fine of a facility and not charge anybody to come in and see it? Well, that's through the generosity of the people of the state of Louisiana. Their legislature appropriates monies to fund the operation of their museum so that the people are not charged. And the reason we do that is because so many of our citizens would not have the financial ability to come in and pay to bring their children in to learn the state's history.
So if they want to find more information about the museum, do they have a website?
Well, you can go to the Secretary of State's website with is you can find it there. It's sos.la.gov, or you can go to the Friends of the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum, and they have a beautiful website, and you can see all the different dioramas, photographs of some of the exhibits that we have, those type of things. But it's much like going to the Grand Canyon, Rose. And the reason I say that is I had seen pictures of the Grand Canyon my entire life.
Yeah.
But once you stand on the edge of the Grand Canyon, you realize the pictures don't do the story.
True. That is true. But if they want to have like a tour, can they walk in and like ask you for a tour? Do they have to set up the appointment on?
Either way, we do a lot of school groups, especially right now during the pandemic when you were not allowed to go to school. We had so many homeschool groups that came through the museum. And so they would call and say, "Are y'all still open? And can we come through? We'd like to come through on Tuesday at this time." And we give them a guided tour.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, Dad, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us an inside scoop on what you do and what's going on at the museum. Thank you all for watching, and I hope y'all have a good rest of your day. We will see you next time on What's Happening SBC.